All right, so again, thank you for joining us and welcome to How to Create a Google Form. This is going to be a beginner's demonstration of how to access and set up Google Forms. We're going to cover a variety of topics, but we won't get into the weeds of the shortcuts and the advanced functioning. What we are going to cover is how to access forms and use a template or how to build one from scratch, how to find existing forms, how to edit and format within a form, and how to review data that comes in from the form. You can also work collaboratively in Google Forms with a team, and we'll demonstrate all that. So a little bit about me. I got my degree from the University of Alabama in December of 2022. I'm currently a branch manager at Somerset County Library System, and I've held a variety of roles there. I also do a lot with the New Jersey Association of Library Assistants, and I'm a STEM aerospace education instructor and member. All right, so what we're here for. What is a Google Form? It's a tool to collect data in the form of a survey or questionnaire. It's either for anonymous feedback or to gain insights on individual preferences. They're easy to edit with a variety of question style selectors. It's like writing in a Word document. You can share forms with collaborators like colleagues or the form participants and review the results of the form with auto-generated reports. These are my form rules that I follow, and you've got two examples on your screen of what I consider to be a bad form. So keep in mind, long forms, meaning lots of questions and sections, are very intimidating. So start easy with a name or an email, and then gently ramp up into the questions that require more thought when you want to gather input on things that require detailed answers. Using concise language is important, so don't add any jargon. Jargon can be harder to read, and it can make the instructions that you're writing for the participants filling out the form harder to understand. Keep in mind, in libraries, there's lots of acronyms, and we have a lot of jargon throughout the field. But if you're making a form for patrons to fill out, they're not going to necessarily know what any of that means, especially if you're talking about something like your catalog's name or the ILS system that you use. The answers and the way you format your answers is also important. Using a mix of drop downs and checkboxes, multiple choice, can look really messy. If possible, try to choose one style, like all multiple choice, and stick with that. And you want to do that because if you ever needed to export your Google form to another form software, you could lose data because the importing software might not be able to read those multiple answer selection types. All right, we're about to go into accessing Google Forms. Before I do that, I'm just going to pop in the Zoom room and see if there's any questions. We're doing good. All right, thank you. All right, how do you access a form? So you've got screenshots here on your screen of just a Google page, and you got the menu app selector, and you're going to just follow that until you find forms. When you left click on that, you're going to get into a new field, new refresh screen that shows you the templates and forms you've created before. So let's go look at it. So I'm in my Google search page. I'm going to click on the apps menu and then select forms. What we're going to see is a variety of forms that are made by people in the workplace, collaborators, and things that I've made. So straight off, what you're seeing at the bottom are existing forms. So if you wanted to find ones that maybe you created, you can search it by owned by me. Otherwise, it defaults to last modified. I'm going to pull up a fun form that we did at my library about the staff bathroom. It's kind of weird. It's kind of a tight space, so we wanted to take a survey of how we could make it more appealing. So you've got the title, nice, short, and sweet at the top. And you notice when I clicked in it and I highlighted it, I got options like bold, italic, underline. If I needed to insert a link or remove all formatting that existed, I've got those options right at the top. Those are the same features that you find in Google Docs, in Google Sheets, and Google Slides. They're very similar to what you find in the Microsoft Suite too. If I click in the next field, it auto highlighted all the text, and this is where you can type, and I can add more to it. So I can say, updated survey and put today's date. And I just use ellipses like that if I know I'm going to add more text later. If I needed to add bullet points or a numbered list, I can add that in the body. This is more like your header, your instruction of what this form is about. Then you've got the different questions. You can rearrange the questions. So if you are ever working on a document, or remember in school when you'd write like a book report, sometimes your brain just thinks out of order and you just want to get it down on paper before you forget the thought. You can always drag and move the questions around. So if you wanted to have it in a different order, but you'll notice this form is very short. It's got 2 different styles of questions. You've got multiple choice with 2 options, multiple choice in another, and then just one that's got check boxes. So if staff had wanted to do other, they wanted to click other things to say that it needed to be updated, we could take care of that. On the top, you got the questions. We're in editing mode because we're in the active form. Let me show you what you've seen if you've ever filled out a form. You've seen the participant side. And I'm not accepting feedback about the staff bathroom any longer, so I'm not collecting responses. So they get this link saying, we're not collecting responses anymore. If I want to open it back up, I click on responses and I turn the form back on really easily by just clicking that slider. And it auto said accepting responses. Let me turn it back off and you'll see big red bar, warning sign, not accepting responses. And this is where I could edit the text that the staff who were invited to take the survey could fill it out. So I just left it as this form's no longer accepting responses, which is the default that Google provides. It was friendly enough, so I didn't need to add anything new. So let's turn it on. Let's go back and refresh the form. And this is what you've probably have seen or taken part of in surveys. So notice I can click anywhere and I can't edit anything because this is the live form and it's in preview mode. For this survey, I kept it anonymous because I wanted everyone in the building to answer how they felt about this bathroom, but I didn't want them to feel like they were targeted in their response, like they were going to get a follow-up question with any answers. But you can see I can collect all the feedback I need on whatever it is. When they hit submit, it just says their response has been recorded, and I had limited the responses so they could only answer one time because I didn't want to skew the results. So I just closed that preview form, which was actively collecting the response. Remember, we had 20 before, now we're up to 21. So you get these summaries, and they're nice at a glance looks, and you don't have to worry about customizing the colors. Google just takes care of that for you. But if you needed to write a report, you can copy this and put it right into a Google Doc, an email, a spreadsheet, and have this entire box that you see in white will get copied over. And you'll see the responses were kind of varied. So it was good that I took the survey the way that we did, because some of the things that I was surprised that, we were very split on if we wanted those partitions removed, but yet everybody wanted the door locked. So some more privacy was definitely needed in that bathroom, and almost, across the board, lots of other updates were needed. So how do you take these responses and look at them in other ways? I'm sure you're wondering. So we stay in the responses field. We can look at the individual questions on their own and look at the options, and then narrow it down by responses. So 16 responded to the one question, 5 to the other answer. You can look at each individual bathroom that way. or I'm sorry, question that way. You can also use the drop-down menu to go between the questions, but since we only have 3, it's easy to use the arrow keys. The individual responses, even though I didn't collect people's names and they couldn't go back and re-edit their response, I can still see individually, and this is just more like if I want to read every individual response. And I can do the same thing. I could say I want to go to number 21. That's the one we just did today. But since we didn't collect emails, this field isn't as pertinent to this kind of a form. Let me just check on the Zoom room, see if there's any questions. None yet. You are free to feel free to unmute or type in the chat, and I'll keep bouncing back to look at it every once in a while. Okay, back to our form. If we click on settings, this is where you get a little bit of variety in how to make the form look. So if I wanted to make it a quiz, you can do it so that, you know, it takes manual review. It's going to have to collect the emails. Like if a teacher needed to give feedback to their students, respondent settings, they can, do you want them to see if they answered incorrectly right away, correct answers, how many points are assigned to each individual question. You can, you know, give the point value. So if you wanted to have we only had 3 questions, but if you wanted to have everything be worth 10 points, you could do something like that. Manage how the responses are collected. This is where you go if you're doing it for grading. You have to put, you know, do you want it to be a verified response, like you had to send them the form to fill out, like the quiz. You don't want to collect responses. I didn't need any responses for this anonymous bathroom survey. If we need verified, then you got when requested or always, do they get a copy of their response? So a copy of their quiz. Always can be nice, just so that they get an email verification to remind them that they already completed that work. Allow response editing. Certain surveys and feedback, you may want to do this. If you were using this to collect your customer incident reports, you may want to have your staff to have that function. That way they can go in as they learn more information on the event. You can restrict it. I work at Somerset County, so I could say, nope, this is only for people who work in my organization. But when I'm doing NJALA work, that wouldn't make sense because then I couldn't collect everyone from across the state. Limit to 1 response is nice. It makes it so that they have to be signed into the account that you sent the form to. It means they can only do it the 1 time. The presentation of the form, if you want to show a progress bar or shuffle the question order, you just toggle to turn that on and off. Your confirmation message, your response has been recorded, is what Google auto defaults, but you click on the edit and you can type it into whatever you want. You can say, thank you for your feedback. And then click save, and it's in there. It saved it nicely. If you want them to be able to do other responses, so then you have to go and you have to turn off that 1 toggle up above that had limited it to 1 response, and then you can make that other one active, which can be useful. It all depends on the type of form or survey you're collecting. So if you sent it to someone and then you want to encourage them and say, now share this with a friend, then they could just send the forwarded questionnaire on. The result summary, this is for the participants who filled out the form. You can let them see the real-time responses, like this view. You can let them see the summary responses. So they will get to see the different graphs. And remember, I turned it on, so I was collecting points distributed. That's what this new insights tool is showing. But they would get to see how divided or unified they were and how they had answered compared to others. If you're going to let people see the responses, I don't recommend letting them see the email because then they could see other people's names. and you want to protect people's privacy as much as you can. All right, let's go back to the bottom. We were at this disable autosave. If you got a really lengthy form, you might want to turn on the autosave so they can save their progress and come back to it. Depending how your workstation is set up, sometimes the screen will go blank after so many minutes of inactivity, and that could really limit how your participants interact with your form. And remember at the beginning, I was saying try to keep them short and sweet. When I make a form that is getting sent out, I try to keep it to under 10 questions or less, because I think anything more than that, just people don't have the same attention span anymore as they used to. So it's just got to be easy. And when you look at something long, you're like, I don't have time for that. So think of it like I'm getting a short synopsis survey, like a pulse survey, seeing how people feel in the moment. And then depending on the information you gather, you can always make a new form and focus on like one or two of those questions that needed more in-depth answers. All right, form defaults, settings applied to the form and new forms. This is the very first form you can make. You can go in here and you can specify, you don't want to ever collect emails. You want the verified emails, meaning you had invited them to take this survey, or you want responder input back. Leaving it unvaried, which is the default, isn't a bad thing to do. That gives you a lot of flexibility depending how you use forms in the future. And the questions default, mark questions by default. I would say yes, leave that on. And if we go back to the questions, you'll see the little red asterisks after every question. And you can turn that on or off in each question box. When you have it not required, there's no red asterisk. When you make it required, it shows up there. When I click out of the box, click on the next question, you see it there again. Okay, I'm going to close this form. Go back. Any questions so far? Maybe? No, that was nothing in there. Okay, again, you can unmute. You can interrupt me. It's fine. Type in the box. We're going to go back to just generic Google Forms. I showed you one that was already made, how we can go in, edit it, look at the results. Now let's look at some of these templates that Google has made for us. Let's look at this time off request one. So again, this was made by Google. And you'll see some of the rules that I was saying that I follow are applied here. So very short and sweet subject title. If you want to, you can click in here and delete it, and you can use their form. It's an editable template. So we can go in here and we can say, I want this all to be uppercase. That's okay. I can click in the subject. Please submit the time you need to take off. Maybe I don't want to do it that way. Maybe I want to say something like, remember, oh boy, to ask for time off at least 1 week in advance, or whatever your policy says. Add an exclamation point so the reminder is a little nicer. I can highlight it. I can bold it. Let's look at what questions they had. The name required, right? Always a good thing, because you need to know who made the request. You'll notice there's nothing about email in here. So let's just go look quick. Did they set it up so that people can, they have it very, very minimal. So questions are applied to all new, or settings applied to all new questions. They're not collecting email addresses, so it's semi-anonymous. Okay. The leave dates, notice they've got dates in parentheses, so you could add more than one, and you know that people will type things like the day of the week, the the literal date, they'll write out the month, day, they'll give it to you in a lot of ways. That may not be the best way to get the date answer. They could have also selected date as a calendar. So if you wanted everyone to do one day at a time, one leave request day at a time, they could have done it that way. They left it a short answer so people could put in multiple dates at one time. Is it just the morning, the afternoon, full day? Okay. Type of leave. So depending on what your policy is sick leave, bereavement time, vacation time, unpaid leave, whatever it is, they'd want you to type that in there. And it looks like that they did. They just left it open. They didn't even apply a question type of how to gain that information. They added this description, which when we build the form for scratch, I'm going to show you what that's for. Here we go, type of leave. It's the same question twice. So that's a little redundant, right? So maybe you don't need to have two of that. Reason for the leave, that's kind of, it could be self-explanatory based on the type of leave, but you'll notice that that's not a required question. So, which is good, because sometimes you don't need to know. But you could use this. Oftentimes, whatever you have put in for the subject title becomes the name of the form. So remember, I just made it all be uppercase letters, but originally it was lowercase. So I'm just going to rename this and say this is Google Forms demo. Save it. And I will send this to you later and you can play around with the form. And I'll try to give you some new questions to see if you can change and tweak some things in here with some keys and guidance. So you can rewatch the video and try to figure things out. All right, can I make the print bigger? You can make the print bigger. Let's go back. We're going to open a brand new form and make one from scratch. So I'm going to click on blank. Don't be intimidated. It defaults to the purple scheme. Remember, that's the logo for the form. So before we make the background beautiful or however you want it to look, I would say get the questions down first. So remember, untitled form. So we're going to say this is Google form from scratch. If you were watching the upper left-hand corner, as soon as I started typing, it started auto-saving for me in the Google Cloud. And it's saying all my changes are saved in the drive, which is true. But notice it still says it's an untitled form. As soon as I click on that, it took my title and it moved it over there. So I'm going to say this is a show and tell how to build a form. And how do we make that bigger? We can bold it. That always helps. We can also click on the big T, little t over here, which if you use its title and description, that just pushed me into my first question. If you've used other Google products, you are familiar with a lot of these options. Some of it we can do in settings to make it bigger. Some of it we can do in add-ons, in the theme, in the preview. So we're going to get to it. If I don't answer your question just organically as I talk, remind me again later. So before I start making questions, I typically will go into the settings and I'll do those quick things of how I want people to respond. Do I want to collect emails? I do not, because I'm going to share this one with you guys later and you can play with it as much as you need. Allow response editing? Sure, we can allow that. Nope, you don't just have to work at Somerset County. Nope, you don't have to limit to one response. Is it a new form? Collect emails. I don't need to collect any emails. Yep, and we'll designate if we want you to or to answer any question. So we'll start off easy with name. The description field is nice, and we got that by clicking on the 3 dots and clicking on description. If I click on it again, it goes away. If I click on it like this, it gives me an option. So I can say, please add your first and last name. Now you'll notice that's not a question. So there's nothing for anyone to fill out. We can test that by clicking on the eyeball in the middle, in the upper right corner. And see, it was more like a description of what the questionnaire is about. So just make sure if you are typing and you run into that, and remember we saw that in the template that we just looked at about leave requests, they had type of leave as like 2 questions. The first one was more probably like this is why we're asking you. And then the next one following it was the question. So if you're going to reorganize your questions later, remember I said sometimes you just got to get it all down on paper before you, and then you can reorganize it before you lose the thought. Just be careful, because if you don't put the question, you put a description one before the question, you might lose that train of thought, and then the form will get out of order. So I don't particularly use that. I am more a fan of just putting it in the header and just instructions on how to fill out the form. So question 1, we get options right away. It defaults to multiple choice, which is okay. But if we need to start simple and build up the questions, we got to start with a short answer and do their name. So the untitled question is literally the question. If we want to add that description line, we click on those 3 dots and add description. And here's where I can put, please add your first and last name. And I want it to be short answer, because multiple choice would only make sense if I knew exactly who was going to fill out the survey. So we'll leave that there. If we go to preview, it opened a new tab. I can see my changes I made to the top. I'm not sharing, I said I wasn't collecting emails, so that says it's not shared. And now people can type their name in there. And I can hit submit. If it was going to be that short of a form, and then it defaults with the pre-done Google text, your response has been recorded, I can go in and edit it. If I spelled my name wrong or I want to double check it, I can do that and submit again. I'm going to close the preview screen, because you'll see that since I was in preview and I tested the form, I got a response right away. And there's my one response. So let's add another question. There's a couple ways you can do it. You can click on this, it looks like the copy and paste icon from other Google products. This duplicates, it literally duplicates everything that we just had in there, including is that a required question or not. So maybe I just want to say the name of your library system. And I can say, please add where you work. And I can leave that one as a short answer again. But let's say I want a new question type to follow up after that. I can do this plus sign on the right, which is add a question. And I can elaborate off the last one and say type of library. And I can add another description and say, tell us what type of library you work in. And I want options for this. So maybe I want to do multiple choice or just check boxes for this one and say, there's different options. Maybe I can say it's a public library. Maybe I can do academic. Maybe I can do corporate or school. Then if I want academic versus school, those are similar. So maybe then I need to add university and many others options. But like I said, I'm going to leave this to you all and you can test it and play with it and you can add all the options you want. And as I added those, I didn't do it in academic order, alphabet order. So all I have to do is hover over it. I get that like 6 grid with the dots, and I can grab it, left click it, and just pull it to the top, and I can make them all be in alphabetical order. Let's add a new question. Let's say we want to say what you like best about your library. And it defaulted. Remember, it was multiple choice is the default. But as I started typing my question, Google was just reading it along with me and saying, oh, that's going to require more text. So it defaulted me to paragraph, which is a nice feature. I don't think we need to have a description for this, but descriptions I always think of are the cue to help people answer that question better. So we can throw one in and just say, please give example of your workplace. And we can say, maybe we don't want that required because not everyone will have an example that they're comfortable sharing. And so paragraph, it's this long answer text that'll go away when people are actually filling out the form. So let's look at that quick. Let's go to preview. I've already responded, so I can do edit my response, and that's okay. And I can see, oh, yep, there's my name. I typed that in the first time I filled that out. Name of library system where I work. You're always going to get a variety of answers. So I'm putting in the acronym of where I work. Some people would spell it all out. Some people would even add the branch name that they work in. All that's okay. If you want it very specific, though, you would add that in the description. We'd go in and we'd change that to say, we could add an example and type it all the way out if we wanted it to look a certain way. What kind of library do I work in? And I'll say, giving presentations like these. All right, so I submit. Yep, if I need to go in and edit it again, I'll click on that later, but I'm going to close the preview for now. Let's refresh this page. You'll notice it still says I only have one response. And that makes sense because I just went in and edited my response from earlier. It didn't tabulate and give me a new one just because I was filling it out a second time. It knows that it's still me, the same person filling it out. Even though I'm not collecting emails, the form can tell who's logged in and who's filling it out. And no, it's not collecting that data forever. So you can see the different responses in the summary. Let me just pop over to the Zoom room quick. No new questions. All right. So I'm not going to add any more questions to this one. Let's go over some of the other features that are over here. This import questions, if you had made a Google form in the past and you wanted to use some of those questions, you can click on this and then it'll show you all the forms that are made either by yourself or your library system, and you can import them in from there. And that kind of just duplicates the form. If you loved this form and other people wanted to use it and adapt it, you can make a copy of the form, which is the 3 vertical dots, and it's make a copy. That's literally going to make a new copy of the exact thing we had, but you can rename it right off the bat. We'll just call it version 2. And you can say where you want it saved in your Google Drive. So if I want to say, I'm going to save it to my branch folder, I can put it in there. As I click make a copy, it'll auto-generate it. So I've got My newly named one is a carbon copy of what we just had, which we created here, but without any responses yet. So that can be a nice trick, a time saver when you're making forms. All right, more on these. The title and description. So if you were on your bottom one, your bottom question, the last one you made, and then you add that, it's like making a new category. So we're going to get, let's say we're going to collect more workplace details. And we can say like, tell us more about where you work. So remember, that's a title, so there's no question associated with that. So if I want to add, maybe I want an image. So I got to add an image to it and make a new section to say like, show me your best library display you've ever made. I could take a picture of myself giving this presentation if we wanted to have that in there too. So let's add a new question. And I'm going to leave it blank, and you guys can, as you toy with it and play with this later, you can add more. You can add an image, add a video, kind of the same features. Google is getting more advanced, so they're adding new things all the time. Add a video is a more newer feature. The add a section, you've seen these in certain forms. You have to answer like the name where you work, what your email is, and then you go on to section 2. It can be a nice way to break up the types of questions you're answering in your survey. But I don't necessarily recommend you do it for every form you use, because remember, my number one rule at the top was try to be concise, try to keep it to less than 10 questions. If you need to build sections, maybe you need to add a second form that people fill out after you get the responses from the first one. But we'll just say more details about a specific question type go in different sections as your reminder of that. And then we want specific answers on one topic. And then you'll add new questions. So if you, let's say, we'll just go easy. Let's say you had their legal name, but now you wanted their nickname. Okay, so then you want a description and say, how would you like to be referred to? And then maybe you want to add pronouns. And maybe you want to keep it short answers so they can select, they can tell you exactly what you want. Maybe here you want check boxes, and you could do like he, him, she, her, they, them, she, them, and on you could go. And you can add an other, and then they can specify in there what they'd like. Let me go back over to this quick. No new questions. Lovely. Okay. So how do you share it? Let's say we were done. We had previewed it many times. We're going to edit our response. You'll notice when you add a section, you have to fill out all of these before you can go to the next. So we have to select something to click next, and then we can get to that new section about nickname and pronouns we had just added. I'm going to close the preview. We think it looks fine. We're going to share it. So now we're getting ready to send it to other people. You click on the send. It's going to prompt you again. Do you want to collect emails? This is your last chance to say yes, no, or otherwise. You got a few options. You can send it to an individual. So if I want to send it to myself, I can type in the individual email. If I want to include it in the email, which is sometimes nice, they can fill it out right from the email that they open. you just click that box. If I want to send it as a link, I can just click the link icon. It's the same icon image used throughout Google products. I can just hit copy, and that copies the full link. If you want the link shown, it's always a good idea to shorten the URL. That just condenses it. You click that box, you hit copy again, or click on it to highlight it, copy and paste. This one, if I want to embed the HTML, so if I wanted to edit like NJALA's website, I could copy it from here, and then I know for sure that that is giving me the form in like preview mode as the editor, not in editor mode. One mistake I see often when people do post to a website is they give people access to this screen that you're seeing, where we can go and we can click on the responses and the question type. So what they have done is they have added a collaborator. So I'm going to add one of my coworkers at SCLS-NJ and NJALA and say, here's our test form. And I can say I want this person to be an editor, or I want to add an expiration. Maybe I only want them to edit it for 1 month is the default. Maybe I only want them to edit it for the day. Like I'm giving them a deadline to tomorrow. So I can do that, which is another newer feature from Google. But here too, I can copy the link, or I can just send them the invite. So I just essentially said, you have 24 hours to fix this form that I drafted. But it's when people are adding collaborators, or they're literally just going to the top of this and copying this web address, you don't want to give people that, because then you've just invited them to edit your entire form, not to fill it out. So for the people that are going to fill it out, you want to go through the send, and you want to pick either I'm emailing it to a group or an individual. I'm going to copy and paste it and like put it in an email, or I'm going to embed it on a website. All right, let me go back over to our room. We're looking good, and we're good on time. So one of the fun things you can do about forms, of course, is customize the theme. Remember I said purple's the icon that forms has been for many years. So it defaults to that same purple SKU. You click on this little paint palette and you can customize it. So here's where you can do the text, make it bigger. So you can change it if you want it to be a specific font, which applied to the whole theme. The titles, 24 is as big as it can go, but the questions, we can make it be different. We can make those be much bigger if we want it to be 18. So that's all done in your theme bar, and it does it universally throughout the form. So you don't have to worry about clicking on each individual question and then going in and doing it. I like things to be consistent, so we'll try to make it all as big and as similar as we can. You can choose an option for the image. The first forms I was showing you, those were very finished, polished looking things. Choose an image. Google has many pre-done images you can use. You can upload, but I will warn you, it will not take just a standard picture. If I uploaded a picture of myself, I might be really zoomed in and all you could see was my eyes or my teeth. It's not going to take a standard photo. You do need to do a little bit of editing and save it as a real, I think it's like a PNG file to make it get this stretched effect. But you can go through and you can say, I'm having a food party. You can do it by theme. Others kind of nice. It's got lots of defaults. We'll pick the chandelier. It's different. It's fun. And before I click insert, just look over to the right-hand side. And I know it's a little faded out, but you see like a rainbow of colors over there. That's just default colors in general. You could pick, if you didn't want to have a picture, you could just pick a color. I'm going to click insert. And what that's going to do is add that image at the top. And then it very subtly changed my background color of everything. So in my banner colors for my section headers. So if I want to change them to be slightly different or really light in color, I can. If I want to change the background around the questions, I can do that on the right. And you can play with it and make it as attractive as you want, or you can add more background colors and get the little hex chroma key, and you can go through and you can change it and add that color in too. Okay, one last thing I'm going to show you, and then we're going to open it up to questions. So this add-ons, this puzzle piece, these are like email notifications for Google. So if you wanted to customize more than what Google provided in your email notifications, or you only wanted select groups to get notified, you can do it in here. There's also form notifications, but you can enable, limit them, restore them. What I will warn you about add-ons is there are some that are free and some that are not. They're relatively cheap, like $39 for 6 months to a year. But if you are making a form that is going to live online for like patrons or whoever to fill out indefinitely, from my experience, these add-ons do break down over time. So try to get what you can from just regular Google standard prescribed things that they give you in the templates and in the tools without having to purchase an add-on. Again, they're not expensive, but they don't last forever. All right, let me open it up to questions. I got your bigger text. If you want to unmute or type in the chat, you sure can. I'll give you a few minutes to do that. While we're waiting, I'm going to show you one other thing, which I should have showed you earlier, which is how do you export all this data? You link it to Google Sheets. So you're in your editable, I moved away from questions and I went to the responses where we had all our beautiful analytical data getting pulled in. So now let's link to Sheets. And it's going to ask me, do I want to choose an existing spreadsheet? Which if I do, I'd hit select, and then it's going to show me all of my Google Sheets. If I select one of these, it'll just make a new tab within that sheet to collect those responses. But it's always safe to say, I just want to create a new Google Sheet. It'll automatically or title it what you've titled your form. And when we click create, it'll populate a new browser tab, and it's got all of our responses in it. And it should look very familiar, just a regular spreadsheet. So how about I go back to the sheet. I'm going to get the link and shorten it and copy it. I'm going to put it in the Zoom chat. So you guys can go in, and if you don't have questions, but you want to play with it, you can go in and fill out that form right now. Otherwise, I will. How do you create a report? That's what I was just showing you. So I invited you to fill out the form. You got that link. We're in our editable form, right? We can see the questions. We can click on it. We can edit it. We click on that responses tab. It said link to Sheets a moment ago. So now it says view in Sheets because I built the sheet. You can either import it to an existing sheet, which until you've got some practice, I don't recommend right away. It's always safe to just launch a new sheet. And then you get this responses tab. And in your spreadsheet, you can do, it automatically freezes the row, so your questions. But you can go in and you can say, I want to wrap the text. And I did a Google thing about Google Sheets, which will have a lot more tips that I'm going to show you right now, but you can bold the questions. And then if you guys start filling out the form, we'll see them populate in real time. So if you want to hang on a second and fill it out, you sure can. I did put it in the Zoom link, right? I did. Can the report be a Google Doc rather than a Google Sheet? You have to export it to Sheets, but you can go to your form and copy these individual analytical graphs and things they give you, and you can copy those and paste them into a doc or an email or a sheet even, which is a nice trick. Or you can go, to your Google Sheet where it auto defaults to send all of the responses, and you can copy and paste and you can manipulate it and make your own charts in here and then copy that over to a doc. It's a good question. Thank you. Okay, any other questions? I'll give you a minute. While you're thinking of that, let me show you. I'll send you this slide deck as well, but it's just more about Google Forms, some help, some overall Google help. You can always reach out to me with your questions too. And let me show you the upcoming things that I'm going to present about for NJALA. Next month is going to be Google Keep, which a lot of people have used without realizing what they were doing. So if you are a person that puts lots of sticky notes around your monitor, or you want to digitize your sticky notes, that's going to be the presentation for you. Otherwise, what's on our schedule, and this is backed by popular demand, we're going to have Lynn Hoffman talking about change in your brain. And she's going to be doing that later this month. There's information on how to register on our website. And I'll send you a link with that as well.